Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Rejection Diaries. My name is Stuart White. Today we're going to be focusing on bouncing back. That's the process of recovering from a rejection and what to do next and how to handle and cope with the feelings that you get in the midst or the post midst of rejection. Now, one of the toughest things to do as a writer who's not got an agent and who's not published is to recover from that initial rejection on that very first book that you wrote, that one that you thought was going to be the one that you is the book that you love, the love of your life, the one that you think that you're definitely going to get that deal on, and then it doesn't happen. And that's difficult to take for all of us. It hurts. We spend a long time afterwards thinking, can I do this? Should I do this? Is it worth it? And other questions like that. And so what we're going to discuss today is how people feel after that initial rejection, but also how we can flip around all those feelings, emotions, thoughts, and other things that circulate in your head that are more negative at that point. So, what is next? When all hope is lost, how do we bounce back and write that next book? Well, one of the things that I think is very, very helpful, not just for writers and not just for dealing with rejection, but for all aspects of life, is to follow some of the principles that are found in cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, if you're unfamiliar with cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short, it's a type of therapy for those who struggle with managing and regulating their feelings, emotions, and actions, which all have direct impacts upon each other. The whole principle with CBT is if you can change the way you think, then you can change the way you feel, and that will then impact upon your actions and your overall happiness with things in your life. As someone who's dealt with a lot of anxiety and depression throughout my life, I know that using those principles and exercises and so on have definitely helped me a lot, even though I still have a long way to go with it. And I definitely would suggest that if you've never heard of it before and you do find that your thoughts change how you feel, change how you act, and have an impact upon your life, this is definitely a route to go down and to look into. So there are sort of three things I've broken it down into in terms of rejection and how we can better manage things and bounce back from it. First of all, we're going to discuss emotional reasoning. Now, this is a cognitive distortion that is that goes along the principles of whatever your emotional response to something is, then that is what is true. So, to give you an example, you might think when you get your rejection in that I am a failure, or I feel like a failure, and so therefore I am a failure. And that is there's and I deliberately emphasise the difference there because there's a difference between the feeling and the thought and the act as well. If you feel like you failed, then you're going to think that you're a failure, and therefore the action that's likely to follow is likely to be failure. And that's a difficult one to not feel after you've poured your heart into a book and work over the course of up to 2 years. It's hard not to feel like that, and I certainly know that I have felt like that at times. And getting back up after all the rejections have come in and the book's been written and so on, and getting on to the next one has taken a lot of time and a lot of persuasion and a lot of neural rewiring within my own brain to convince myself that what I'm doing is worthwhile, that I'm not a failure, and actually redefining the parameters of failure and success goes a long way towards that. So if you can sort of say something like just finishing the book is a success, which it is, and very much you're in the minority of people who want to write a book if you have finished writing a book. I think that I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's not a high percentage of people who start that actually finish. You've sent your work out. As I've said before, that's an incredibly brave thing to do. Not easy. And anyone who has done that has my full respect. And I think you're very brave and that you are a success if you've done that. One thing that one of the problems with our response, our emotional reasoning when we get rejection is that we ignore anything that challenges that true perception of the belief simply because we feel it. So we feel like we've been rejected, we feel like a failure. So anything else that anyone tries to say or do or um, use to help us, we ignore that, we push that to the side. And one tip or one helpful way for you to overcome that is to think about and try and do this when things are going well is to encapsulate that feeling, write it down if you can, record your own voice discussing how you feel about it, note down and someone gave me this advice the other day to note down what it is they love about their manuscript and writing it and so on and why they chose that idea. Write it on a post-it and pop it above your computer as you're writing. And you can use that to draw on that emotional energy when things aren't going so well. So canning or containing the positive energy and feelings when things are going well can then help you when that well is dry and you feel like a rejection, you feel like a failure, and therefore you start thinking that you are those things. It's worth remembering that you have in the past been successful in a number of other ways, and you have felt good, you have felt like a success, and channeling that and using it when you need it. So emotional reasoning, taking away how you feel from how you think or how you think of yourself, your self perception. That is important when you're dealing with rejections, especially in the aftermath when it's particularly raw. The other concept of cognitive behavioral therapy to discuss is filtering. Now, I am the world's worst at filtering. Again, it's a cognitive distortion whereby the person um, ignores any positive thoughts or comments or praise or compliments, and instead they focus entirely on the negative and push all the positive stuff out. Now, as writers, I know that many of you will relate to this, such as when you get feedback from someone, you'll focus on that one comment that they made where you could maybe improve this section, and you'll ignore the pages and pages where your critique group or your partner have given you praise and said this is going well and this is going well and this is going well. And actually I do this with every aspect of my life, not just my writing, and it's a real problem, actually, something that I really need to work on. And I bet there are many of you who are in a similar position as well. So we ignore all the positives and we focus only on the negatives. It's actually quite a normal thing, that as well. So if you're feeling that just now, you're not in the minority. You're not the only one. We all think like that, and it's something which we all have to manage and get better at. And I think that, again, the idea that my friend gave me the other day about the post-it, about putting up something positive, we can do something similar and think about the times where, for example, you were shortlisted for a prize, or you got praise from a critique partner, or you get accepted for a magazine, or your short story did really well, or just you felt good about something that you wrote. It is worth, if you can, documenting that and keeping it handy for the times when you are so deep into filtering out all the positives that you need that visual reminder, that post-it note, that voice recording of yourself saying well done to yourself, to your future self, to try and g you up and give you that positive energy which you are yourself filtering out of the current situation. And it can be easy to do it. So, for example, I've had rejections even just this year where they've been personalized, and the agents maybe said something like, you know I really love this, I really love that, I really love that, however. And then The only thing that I read in that email is what comes after, however, or the part that comes after, unfortunately. And that is all I focus on. And I ignore the fact that I have an endearing character, or I have a really exciting, fast paced opening, or the emotional stakes are high, or great characterization, or whatever the positive is that is given back to you. I completely ignore that. And I know that many of you will be similar as well. And that is something I really shouldn't do, and that none of us should do. We should try and focus upon the positives that come in there. So filtering, if we can, try and take some of the positives out of it. But if not, then try and, as I say, at some point in the past, document a positive moment, a shortlisting, an acceptance, a great comment from your critique partner, a self-reflective voice note from yourself where you've talked about how good you're feeling about something that you did, how proud you are of yourself for overcoming a challenge that you had when writing the manuscript. All of these things are particularly useful and could help you when it comes to managing your own negative filtering. Um, and I realise the hypocrisy in what I'm suggesting and what I'm discussing today, because I am absolutely the world's worst when it comes to that. And that follows on nicely to the third thing that I was going to discuss, which is, again, something I'm particularly bad at. And that's why I chose these three things, because I didn't want to pick something that I felt I was doing okay with. I wanted to pick something where I struggled, because the likelihood is if I'm struggling with it, then many other people are too. And so hopefully it helps the maximum number of people having this discussion. So, yeah, the third thing that we do when we have had a rejection from an agent is we start to catastrophize. We do it every single time, and again, it's a cognitive behavioral therapy label that they use to define someone that constantly assumes that the worst will happen. And I know when it comes to my own writing, certainly, and in a number of other situations in life, that is very much the case for me. I'll sit down with the book I'm writing just now, for example, and sometimes I'll just go, you know what? Why am I bothering? Why why am I doing this? Why am I spending 2 hours out of my evening just now, when I could be doing other things to write this book that I know no matter how hard I work at it, and no matter how good I make it, it will be rejected. It will not be published, and I'll spend a good chunk, of not just time but emotional investment into the book over the next year or two to therefore get rejected. It's no good. I constantly say that in my own head. It's no good what you're doing. It's not going to be rejected. Blah, blah. You catastrophize, and that comes as a result of not just one, but usually multiple rejections, as many of us have had with several books. You just feel like, can I still go on? Can I keep continuing with this? And this again links back to our episode on emotional resilience and some of the techniques we need to use for that to develop that. And the one thing I would say is catastrophizing for a small period of time isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. You just get that out of your system, and then you reset and you go again. I do that regularly. I'll go from what's the point in this to a few days later thinking, oh, this is the most exciting, best thing I've ever written. I'm really keen to get this finished and so on. And yeah, that yo-yoing happens for me quite frequently, and it might happen for you, or it might just be one long, continuous catastrophizing episode that you have. And again, just try and grasp the positives when they come along, even though they are few and far between. We all know that. Anything you can to give you that positive energy to work through the rest of your book, and think, well, actually, this is worthwhile. We have all been there, and it is worthwhile for you to keep going with that. There are probably a ton of published authors who are sitting there and are saying, yes, that happened to me. And in fact, it might even have been the published book one, and then it's with book two that they get that feeling. I mean, this will happen to all writers at all stages, at all times. I'm certain, to a greater or lesser degree. And so, yeah, we say, why should I bother trying? Well, I'll tell you why you should bother trying, and that is because if you've sat down already and have completed a novel, you have shown incredible resilience. You've shown incredible commitment to wanting to write books for children and entertain children and tell them stories. And I think if you have committed that much once, then you're able to and probably will do that again. And so catastrophize for a day, a week, even a month. But then at some point, you have to hit the reset switch and say, this is just my feeling after I've been rejected. And that is leaking into my thoughts, and it's poisoning them and telling them things which aren't true. And your book is worthwhile, your writing is worthwhile. You have to get it finished. You have to send it out to agents again. You have to attempt to get it published again. Now, with the caveat that if that's not for you, then obviously, just enjoy your writing. But if you want to be a published author, then you have to write the book and then you have to send it out again, and you have to be willing to take the risk that it will be rejected all over again, and you might feel this way again. But take solace in the fact that this has happened to millions of people before you. It will happen to millions of people after you, and of those who you view maybe as your sort of writing idols and author heroes, they have probably most likely been through a similar experience on some level, where they've catastrophized, they've filtered all the good out when they're looking over their work, and they only focus on the negative, and their emotional reasoning has gone um, down a path, a darker path, and has leaked into the feelings have leaked into their thoughts, and their thoughts have leaked into their actions. And that's one of the key principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is that cycle between emotions and thoughts and actions. And it's cyclical. So, i.e., the action of just sitting down and writing every day, even if you don't feel you're in that place, even if you think you're rubbish, the actual action of doing that every single day, or once a week, or once a month, however often you can do it, that rewires your neurons and changes your feelings, and it changes your thoughts, and gradually over time it wires you back into that cycle of, well, actually this is worthwhile doing. I do it every day, and actually some days when I do it, it's not terrible. It does not completely suck. It's actually all right. And that's what you've got to do, is just keep persisting, writing a little bit every day, and that will eventually reverse any of the negative feelings, and then thoughts, and then actions that you might have gotten yourself into. And it's very easy to do. I mean, I have had hundreds of rejections now. I'm well into the maybe the 300-400s now. I would need to go and count them to know exactly, but and I still want to do it. I still want to write my books. I still want to try and hopefully one day get published. I do find it's a daily battle with my feelings and my thoughts, and that impacts heavily upon my actions. I do have days where I sit down and say, what's the point in this? And I don't write. And other days where I sit down and I think, actually, that's all right. That's gone okay, and I should do this again tomorrow. And sometimes you wake up tomorrow and you do it again. And then other times you wake up the next day and you read back what you did the previous day, and you realize, actually, it's not as good as I thought it was. And you get into that negative cycle again. It's a difficult one. And hopefully by identifying, and this is the way certainly my brain works anyway, by identifying the triggers, the things which cause you to feel and think in those negative ways, that can help you manage your actions, and your subsequent then feelings and thoughts. As I say, it's a cycle. um, when you get rejected initially, though, I would say, and I'll finish off by finishing on this note, it is okay for you to feel terrible. It is okay for you to feel a bit down. It is okay for you to filter, catastrophize, show really negative emotional reasoning immediately after. But the quicker you can try and reverse that, or certainly reset and rewire those those neurons, then the quicker you'll get back on it and write the next book, because that's ultimately what we all have to do. It is work at the end of the day. It should be enjoyable work. It should be something we're passionate about and we enjoy, but it's still work, and we just need to sit down and go on to the next book. If that is what we see writing as for ourselves, if you see it as more of an enjoyable, therapeutic, no big deal, not bothered about being published, don't really see it as a job type thing, then maybe that's not the route for you, and you just do it for fun, and you don't send it to agents, and that would be beautiful and lovely, I think, for those who don't have those aspirations. But if you do, then obviously it comes with all of the various things that we've discussed today. And that, I guess, moves me on to the very last thing that I was wanted to chat about today, which was about the physical act of bouncing back. So you've received your rejection, you've gone through the cycle of feelings, negative thoughts, negative actions, perhaps. You've had your fourth night in a row of sitting on the couch with the tub of Ben and Jerry's, watching some of your favourite old series, trying to cheer yourself up. You've gone through the ritual of printing out your manuscript and throwing it on the bonfire, or you've gone through the ritual of telling your partner for the 100th time this year that you're giving up and writing and you're never doing it again because what's the point? And you get all that out of your system. And the next thing we need to do is we need to write the next book, the next idea, because that's what the job is. The job is to write a new book. Even if you're successful, that's the job. You need to write the next book, regardless of the outcome of the previous one. And it's interesting because obviously I follow a lot of fellow writers on Twitter, and it's interesting to see how various people respond to that and get on with it. And it certainly is true that, and I'm lucky that I follow a lot of people who are very professional and very good at this. You just have to write the book and then move on and then write the next book. And the bits in between for us who are unagented and unpublished are not so nice. But even the published authors are probably getting rejections on those books that they're writing. They're maybe been told by their agent that they don't think that they're going to be able to sell this one, although it's usually at an earlier stage for those with an agent. Um, they might try and sell it with their agent, and no publisher takes it up. It never ends, and we have to better understand our feelings when we receive rejection, and trying to temper them from leaking into our thoughts and our actions, and having a big um, impact upon on how we think and how we act post rejection. Okay, so I hope you have all enjoyed listening and learning a little bit more about both cognitive behavioral therapy, but also how the techniques and principles that are discussed in that therapy can be applicable to those of us who have been rejected. My name's Stuart White, and may the force be with all of you.